episode number 2, the Focused Life podcast. We are getting in the recording booth, the dojo, aka the garage, here to drip sweat. All right, so a quick recap. Episode number 1. That was about the timeline of the unfolding or leading up to the unfolding. I labeled it. It is now on Spotify. It is on YouTube. I labeled it Introduction to the Unfolding. All right, from 1990, which is my birth year, until 2019, where people started to really come into my life and shift some things. So if you haven't already, I highly recommend just tapping into that first episode, getting used to kind of what this podcast is about, really, all encompassing. And now we're going to start to really try and fine tune this. Okay, this is where let's call it the meat and the potatoes, right? This is where we are going to now take all those individual pieces that the traditional systems keep separated, and you seek them out individually. We're going to now take these pieces, and week by week or every few weeks when an episode is released, my goal here is to start creating a bridge between point A to point B and so on and so forth. All right, now the focus of today's episode is based around influential people that come into your life and create waves, create ripples, right? So I am going to go through a list of people today. I'm going to give shout outs. I'm going to provide links and Instagram accounts or websites, so on and so forth, so that once I'm done or as I'm going through, you have access to these resources, right? That is one of the biggest drivers of why I really want to do this podcast, is because I feel so grateful. I feel blessed to an extent that I have come into contact with these people. Now, everyone has these set of people, whether you recognize it or not, they are there, right? And the more that you strive to shift how you're showing up, to bounce in and out of environments, to do things that are unknown, more challenging, the more likely you are to start tapping into and connecting with people that really take your thought process, your belief system, and just have it come to a screeching halt. Now, what does that mean? That means that everything that I knew for so long, up until 2019, right? Everything that I knew for so long became challenged, became porous. There were so many holes in what I knew, and I was lost. I was scared. I could not go a day without just thinking about, how did I live the last 29 years of my life? And only now am I starting to dabble into it. I was never aligned. It doesn't make sense. I didn't have control. I wasn't aware. Blah, 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 blah. Right? So that is what today's episode is about. Okay? Now, having said that, let's get into this. Okay? So we are going to discuss the influential people, influential resources within my journey, and I hope to provide you with some insight here. That's what I like to do, right? I consider myself a facilitator. I pull information. I learn from people above me, beside me, etc., that have more years of experience, that are looking outside of the box, that, like Matt Labasco will be brought up today, who is working on this vitality health paradigm shift, right? I pull a lot of resources from him. CJ Koblisco will be brought up. He is the guy that I go to when it comes to movement and how we're connecting to deeper levels of ourselves. I go to CJ. Boom, I'm going to pull information there, and I'm going to help facilitate a connection for you. So we are going to go through a list of people. I have listed these people in order that they came into my life. Now, the interesting part about this is there are some people that I don't speak to anymore. Actually, on this list, there's really only one person, but not to say that there weren't others throughout the journey. If you're not on this list, it's not like, oh, he doesn't recognize that I helped him. But no, that's not what we're talking about here. These are people that I see as the definition of why I was able to create something different. So, first and foremost, it is extremely important to recognize a support system and how powerful that can be. This is this is a step above. Having a support system is a step above being able to ask for help in my book, right? You don't have a support system if you're not able to ask for help. Now, the support system may be there, but you may not have access to it because you're blocking yourself. That was my case. Every single circumstance, I had to fight my own mind to ask for help, to gain support, to allow myself an opportunity at something different. That sometimes, oh man, there were times where days, where weeks would pass before I ever reached out to anyone for sometimes as simple as when I was in a financial crisis. No, when I was in just a really poor spot financially, I'm not joking you, there were times where I needed $5 for gas. To be able to ask for $5 for gas at one point in my life, I would go through days of suffering. I would go through hours of sitting there, or when I say sitting there, like going through work, being in school, whatever it was, knowing that I was going to hit E on my tank soon, knowing that all I needed was $5 just to get me another day or another couple days. And I couldn't get it out of my system. I could not physically ask people. It took so long. And that got me to a point where at one point I was resorting to, I'm going to steal money. I'm going to steal something to sell, whatever it was. So, again, that's within that period that person stealing is Nick 0 to 1.0, right? Heck, when I met some of these people that I'm going to list and speak to today, we had to discuss finances. We had to discuss how I was going to pay for some services. We had to discuss how to prioritize my finances because I could get, someone could give me literally $1 million and it would be gone in a few days. Not because I wasn't grateful for that $1 million, but because I had no idea what to do with money. I didn't know what it meant. It had no purpose in my life. I just thought, oh, money comes, money goes, right? You make it to lose it. No, absolutely not. And if you live that way, then you're probably suffering financially, if we're being honest. Okay, let's get into this. In order of exposure, so meaning 2019 hit, boom. Well, actually, it was 2018, my son was born, August 2nd, okay? Boom, that happened. I'm in crisis mode. I'm not sleeping. I don't have money to bring enough food for all of us. So I'm like, all right, baby's got to eat. His mom's got to eat. I'm just grabbing where I can. Boom, 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 right? I'm working at a gym. Well, I'm working at a few different places. I'm working at a gym, right? And we had an open spot, or we had a vacancy for a new trainer. So, a new trainer walks in and he's like, hey, my name is Mike Lenox, Exhilarate Fitness, right? He walks in, and this certain facility that I worked at, there were 7 or 8 other trainers there, all independent contractors coming and going, right? Pay month by the rent. You set up your business how you want to. You respect other people's boundaries, etc. You guys F around on, throughout the day and blah, blah, blah. You build relationships that way. A lot of fitness facilities are built like that nowadays. Well, he comes in. He's extremely respectful, extremely humble, works hard, is extremely organized with the way he's writing and setting up his workouts, the intent behind why he's having people move certain ways, the rep count, the sequencing of one exercise to another. And then the thing that really threw me for a loop, those of you who can see me, I'm going to demonstrate this here. Those of you who are listening, then he threw me for a loop because he had someone do a squat where when they were beginning to do their squat motion, so TZ1 of the squat, which is the dropping down phase, right? He had them, essentially it looked like they were diving into a pool between their legs. So it was complete flexion from cervical through thoracic, through lumbar to the pelvis, to the hips. And then, right, you're flexing the hips, you're flexing the knees, you're flexing the ankles. So it was like this, you took someone who's standing upright and you almost made them into a ball, right? So for those of you who are watching, right, the squat goes down and it looks a bit like this, and then coming back up, right? Boom, and back up. And it definitely creates a nice type of elasticity in the system if it's available, so on and so forth. And anyway, he does this, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What was that? And he's like, it's a movement squat. And I said, what's a movement squat? And that basically was like step one, right? That was the first thing, was my brain immediately picked up on, ooh, there's a different way to do a squat. That's outside of the norms of, single leg squat, Bulgarian split squat, blah, 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 like all that traditional bullshit. We can leave that to the side because this was based on movement. This was based on loading the system a certain way, using ground force reaction, using massive momentum, right? And being able to say, we're going to move this person in an efficient manner to try and optimize their body and their biomechanics. Okay. Well, I did not know anything about that at the time. So, movement squat happens. Boom, great. A couple days later, right, I'm in my vibe. I'm in the gym. I got my loud rap music banging. And Mike Sick comes up to me. He's got a client coming in, and he says, hey, do you think we could change the music? I have a client coming in. And I said, fuck no. What are you talking about? And he goes, I'm trying to run a business. And then I got pissed. I got real, and Mike can tell, he's probably laughing right now if he's listening to this, because Mike, he went about his business and he was, very, like I said, very quiet, kept to himself. He didn't cause any problems. I caused problems. I caused conflict. I wanted people to feel uncomfortable because that's what breaks the mold, right? No. And, but then later that day and the evening and the next day, I started to really process that statement because I started to realize I'm not actually running a business. I don't know what I'm doing. I am lost. I'm exhausted. My son was just born. I'm not sleeping. I feel like a zombie most days. I'm telling myself I'm okay. I'm working out for hours during the day. I'm eating whatever I can find. I'm working crazy hours throughout the day. When it got to the point, my son was on my chest, at a few months old. He's in the gym with me, strapped to my chest so that I could still do sessions. Like, nothing about it was favorable, let's say that. So, taking that next step, right? So, Mike comes in with the movement squat. Mike says, I'm trying to run a business. Mike starts to pick up on my patterning. Mike starts to pick up on let's just say this, how angry I am. And how much I display that anger and that frustration, that confusion, so on and so forth, right? And so he says to me one night, I'm about to do my boot camp class. It was like a 6 or 7 p.m. class. And he says, hey, I just want to let you know, there's a class I go to on, I believe it was Tuesday nights at the time. There's a class I go to Tuesday nights. And it just kind of, you don't have to, your anger is a choice. You don't have to choose that. The first time he said it, I was like, dude, what? Bro, have you lived a day in my life? Like, what are you talking about? Right? Week goes by, brings it up again. Are you sure you don't want to check it out? I said, you know what? Okay, let's do it. So I go check out this class, right? Let's just say the first class I went to, I almost freaked out because the whole class was about emotional awareness, and everyone was extremely vulnerable in there. I felt so uncomfortable. I felt out of place. I felt stupid. I felt lost. I kept saying, why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? But everything was based around creating awareness about your emotion, naming your emotion, being able to just recognize what was there and say, hey, what is it? Oh, is that anxiety? Oh, okay. Like I'd never taken time to name my emotion. What am I actually experiencing? I don't know, right? Who cares? There's no reason to name it. Anyway, so on and so forth, right? I left that class, and that was one of the defining moments because I left that class and I hated it so much. I was in so much pain that class for the rest. I didn't sleep that night. I the next day I woke up and I was like, I need to find a way to pay for that class because I need more of it. So that, okay, Mike Lenox, that was initial exposure. I consider Mike Lenox my co-creator. He's definitely my workout buddy. I've since 2019 now. He and I work out consistently every week, a few times a week, and we are now inside of the G3 programming. I want to bring him up through that as well. We dabbled with MDMC together. We got to do some case studies together. We did a movement apprenticeship together. We did virtual training through the pandemic together. Like Mike is my man. He's my go-to. We hold each other accountable, and we continue to get after it. There's not a day where we do not discuss meaning, purpose, passion, striving for something greater in life, and creating awareness around things that may be hiding. Okay, person number 2, right? Alyson Hawkins. Big shout out to Alyson. I do not talk to Alyson really anymore. I actually sent her a text this last week because I started thinking about this and thinking about the people who really helped me create change. Alyson, at basically same time as Mike, Alyson was, man, she's like, I wish I could give her a hug right now. She kind of is like an angel in that when I was displaying this anger that Mike picked up on, Alyson came to me one day. I was training. It's funny how all this happened in the gym, right? Because this was my main environment, and I was just so Alyson, she's training with another trainer. Alyson is a client of another trainer. Alyson has many years of therapy experience and worked across the board in various ways to help people with their mental, emotional state and health. And Alyson comes up to me. I'm yelling at one of my clients, and Alyson comes up to me and she says, she stands about a foot away from me. I'm kind of like, from role models, I'm like, now that I have you in my personal space, like she's there, and she says, "Are you okay?" And I was like, who are you? I didn't know her. I didn't know who this person was. And she says, would you like some help? And I was like, what the fuck, lady? How dare you? She left, and I ended up talking shit about her to just about everyone in the gym. Like, can you believe what this lady did? Right? Again, like the amount of pain and suffering I was inside of, I was blind to the fact that maybe there's another way to live. So she says to me, we can meet up at a park and we can sit under a banyan tree. We have these big, beautiful banyan trees here in Florida. And I was like, okay, this lady's she's a kook. She had out of her mind, right? Week goes by. Month goes by. 2 months go by. I think it ended up being 3 months. I could be off on my timeline there. I think it was about 3 months before I finally said, she was just repetitive. Hey, would you like some help? She would say hi here and there. She'd ask me how I'm doing, and then finally I was like, fuck it, okay. So we went to Riverbend Park here in Jupiter, off of Indiantown. Sat under a banyan tree, just like she said. And first thing we did was make things really uncomfortable. So we just sat there, and she just smiled. And she just let me be. I became very emotional. And then she taught me, over time, how to connect with nature a little bit more, listening for certain calls of birds that, depending on, the history of the tradition behind it or the culture, then certain things like a blue jay, when a blue jay starts using its voice and a blue jay's within your vicinity, some people say that the blue jay is trying to let you know that you have something stuck here in your throat, and you need to get it out. You need to voice what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, right? And it's interesting to think about that because I often think of like, I'm gonna think through this problem and then I'll get it out. So it's a top-down driver, right? Whereas the way that Alyson spoke about it was, no, it's going to come from deeper down within here, and it's going to come out. So it's a bottom up driver. And even right now, I almost want to cry because that's interesting to think about. That there's the perception of we think through something and then we vocalize or we articulate it, etc. But there are going to be experiences in life in which you feel these things and deep within you, the core, the authentic self, and then your body wants to do anything and everything it can to try and get that out. Sometimes that is a yell, sometimes it's a cry or a shout, a moan, sometimes it's words, sometimes it's movement. It will express itself differently. And that's what Alyson helped me connect with. So shout out to Alyson. She held space for me every single time. She ended up helping me financially. She ended up helping me just kind of connect to my mental self. She helped me through some very tough times with my son, with his mother, my son's mother. She helped me through my own energy. And like I said, now it's funny. Today I'm driving, right, and a cardinal flies right in front of me. And the first thing I said was, "I appreciate you, Cardinal." It just reactively, I just said, "I appreciate you, Cardinal," and then I laughed because I'm like, I still in this current state, I do my best to connect with nature, and I'm always outside. And now I'm barefoot all the time, and my shirt's off all the time, and I much would rather embrace the heat of Florida and sweat my ass off than I would sit inside an air conditioned. I can't do the artificial traditional way of living. Like, I like to be outside. I like to connect with that. And certain experiences have happened over the last few years. Actually, end of last year, I'm doing a workout in here. It's a nice chilly morning, and a cardinal flew into the garage. I have it on video because I was taping at the time. Cardinal flew into the garage, sat right next to me for about 5 seconds. I almost cried. I said good morning, and then the cardinal flew back out. And I have it. I have pictures, and I have video of it. Like, that type of stuff, it's so easy to brush by and just go unnoticed. But that is the foundation of connecting to your deeper self, because that experience, that interaction with that cardinal means more to me than so much of what I go through on a daily basis does. Right? And that's not to say that the people I interact with are not important, and the people I'm helping and trying to teach and facilitate, like, I'm not saying that's not important. I'm just saying that nature ultimately, to me, it occurs as it's the priority. I want to connect with that. Okay, now moving on. So Mike, Alyson, boom, boom. Okay, then I meet my wife, Emily. All right. And at this time, obviously, she's not my wife. And at this time, actually, she did not respond well to me. So I mean, she's my wife. She's my best friend. She's my partner. She's my confidant. She's the truth teller. She challenges my growth. I try and challenge her growth. Through the first few years, let me tell you this. I have a belief now that those people who are considering first off getting married, moving in together, and starting a family, there should be about a 5-year period in which you have to basically live with each other in terms of dating before any of that can happen. The reason I say that, look, and people don't do that, and that's fine. The reason I say that is because through the first 5 years before we decided, hey, we're going to get married, or I should say through the first 4 years before we decided to get married in the 5th year, I've never had so many challenging conversations in my entire life. And if you ask Emily, apparently to her, those first 4 years were not that challenging. They weren't that rough. She doesn't relate to it that way. She's much more of a lover, a supporter. She empowers people. She connects with them. She's always willing to give herself to help them up. And I'm starting to tap into those things. But I am much more of the black and white. I'm much more of the break it down. Let's use logic. Okay, here's the game plan. Let's execute and solve this issue, solve this problem, right? Well, when I met her, everything was about, is that really how you want to show up? Why are you talking to people like that? Are those the words you really want to choose? Why do you think that you're actually tired? Or do you think it's just because you're telling yourself that? Like, this was every conversation, right? Like, and we had conversations about racism. We had conversations about politics. We had conversations about the trans community. We had like, because I was a piece of shit and she was the exact opposite. She embraces the world. Now don't get me wrong, she's someone she has her priorities and she's extremely driven to execute, but she was much more open-minded than I was when we first met. And so that was pretty intense. So I'm not going to spend too much time on Emily right now. I'm going to put some contact information in for her, because if you are looking for a tutor, an educator, someone to help your children get into places like Bach, where they have to essentially perform, then you want someone like her. She holds an improv camp each summer. She holds it throughout the school year. She is incredible. Okay, so I will put information in there to connect with my wife Emily. She's incredible in terms of how she is helping your children just be the best that they can be, really, and that's amazing. So, boom, next. All right, Matt Labosco. Okay, Matt Labosco. Matt Labosco is currently he's here in Jupiter, Florida. Originally California, came out here. He helped me through. So the class that I went to with Mike Lenox that I mentioned in the beginning, that was his class about naming your emotion, and you have a choice, and let's create a vision, and what are the actionable steps that we can do. And I was like, all right, there's no way people are doing this, but they really are. And then it was a movement apprenticeship I did with Matt. So Matt has a fairly substantial experience in movement versus exercise. And taking that one step further, he now tries to share with the world his approach on this vitality health paradigm, or health vitality paradigm, and that we need to take into account all of this, right? All of this. The environment that someone's in, this, how they're managing their stress, their movement or exercise habits, their daily movement patterns, what are they doing most often, right? Their systemic health, their diet, their nutrition, their sleep, their hydration. He takes this all into account, and he has extensive knowledge in body work. So he's actually using ground force reaction, taking the upright function of a human, and if need be, he will work through your soft tissue to create greatness, open up capacity, and allow you to access more potential within your system, within the muscle tissue, the connective tissue, right? So this guy's legit. Like, I'll just say that. And so I meet with him. I consider him my career coach. He may not consider that title, but to me, he is that career coach. I meet with him once a month. I invest that money into him because he is really good at listening, having acceptance for where someone is, and being able to highlight that where someone's focus is may not necessarily be the place that is going to be favorable or providing them results, right? So for example, at one point in my life, I kept focusing on, I want fulfillment from my day, from my week. I kept saying, I'm unfulfilled. I feel unfulfilled. And he's like, the more you focus on fulfillment, the less likely you are to hit it, right? Now, it's interesting because I ended up listening to Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. Again, a resource that you absolutely need to tap into. A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He went through the Holocaust, and he experienced it firsthand, and he wrote about it. And not only did he write about it, he took his experience and found pieces. So he pulled resources from it, information from it, that he felt could help individuals take steps forward in their own life. Now, what does that mean? That means that he basically, Viktor Frankl, I'm saying, spoke to we should not be looking for happiness from our life, right? We shouldn't be pursuing happiness. If we are, we will always miss the mark. Happiness should be a byproduct. Happiness will ensue, right, when we are starting to connect to our deepest purpose, our deepest meaning, the deepest drive, the mission of what we are supposed to be doing, right? We are not put on this earth to go and be happy. That's not what this is about, right? That is not what the meaning of life is about. And so many people, I actually had someone ask me a few weeks ago, Nick, I'm really struggling to decide if I want to be happy or if I want to chase money. And I said, I would do neither. And this person was like, what? And then we got into a little conversation, but that's it, is the understanding of like, you don't, in my belief, if it's something outside of you, right? If you're thinking that happiness is going to be provided to you and you can chase it, if you think money is going to be provided to you and you can chase it, et cetera, then there's a misalignment, right? These are byproducts of the greater purpose, of the focused life, of the intent of the North Star. Where are you heading? What is your passion? What is your purpose? What are you trying to give life? Some people think that life is responsible for providing you with something, providing you with the emotion, providing you with fulfillment and happiness. No. If you tap into what you think, what you believe you are supposed to be providing life, then all those things become byproducts. Promise you. I've created some of it. Like, I promise. Okay, so that's Matt Leposco, tapping into all that. Again, I will put links out for his website. He has an office here in Jupiter. This guy's a magician, essentially, okay? I highly recommend getting in touch with him. If you are in pain or discomfort, if you are trying to shift your career, or you're confused about your career, if you're having trouble in relationships, so on and so forth, this guy will at least allow you to open up your own mind. And really your spirit, your energy. Highly recommend. Okay? Taking that next step. So, first off, I want to give a shout out to CJ Kobliska. Okay? So I consider him my movement coach. Now, same as Matt, like, is he like, yeah, I'm Nick's movement coach? He may not relate to it that way, right? But CJ Kobliska of Gymnasio, he is the director of programming there, as well as one of the coaches now, I think for about 10 years. This guy he's a movement coach. He's an explorative colleague, as I consider him. This guy has helped me tap into depths of my body that I didn't know were possible, and the way that I move. And you're going to get into, so, I mean, if you think of the Vitruvian man, right, and you think of, right, this position here, and you have the different, right, like, I can make a circle. Okay, I'm making a circle, right? If you do this, so stand up, feet shoulder width apart, hands spread. Okay, reaching out from left to right as far as you can. Okay, now you take those hands all the way up above your head. Take those hands all the way down to the ground. You've created what? A circle. You haven't created a box. You haven't created a rectangle. Those things are within the circle. The box is within the circle. The square, the rectangle, the triangle. Those are within that sphere, that circle, right? So we have CJ created a program called the Spherical Matrix. He coined the term the sphere of potential. I shouldn't say he coined it. I think he did. There may be more history there. I'd have to let him kind of express that. The sphere of potential is the circle that we can create through our own movement, and we go and explore. What happens, though, so just for clarification here, and this is going to be an episode in which we talk about kind of the fitness industry, what happens is traditional style physique training takes that circle and makes it as small as it can. So if here's movement, if here's the movement spectrum, right? Here's movement. Here's this enormous circle that I can reach in all different ways, right? And I can step and lunge and jump and squat, push and pull and reach and lift. If I can do all of that, the fitness industry basically takes it and says, okay, stand there, don't move, and do bicep curls. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, stand there, don't move, and just squat. That's interesting. Okay, now lay down on this machine over here and flex your knees so that you're contracting your hamstring. Like that's what we're talking about in terms of movement versus exercise. Exploring your sphere versus basically throwing your sphere away and becoming as isolated and independent of all other influence as you can be, right? That's how most personal trainers are taught. That's how most personal training certificates and higher degrees are taught, whether it's bachelor's of kinesiology, exercise science, so on and so forth. You are not taught to explore your sphere of potential in order to shed layers of karma and trauma, etc. In order to get to the deeper core, your more authentic self, you are taught to look at the tools that you have, the equipment that you have, right, the machines that you have, and sit yourself down and become a slave to those things. That's bullshit. Okay, you're hearing me talk about that a lot. So, CJ, boom, director of programming, Gymnasio in San Luis Obispo, California. Okay, this guy's blowing up on Instagram. He's just blowing up in general. The guy's incredible. He holds such great space. I've been so blessed to meet him through the MDMC program. Okay, the multidimensional movement coaching program. Highly recommend you look into that if you are a personal trainer or movement practitioner or healthcare practitioner looking for a shift in the way you handle business and the lens in which you look at your clients. But CJ helped me unlock myself physically, right? And then I realized, oh my goodness, in conjunction with Matt, in conjunction with Mike, in conjunction with Emily, in conjunction with Alyson, I realized that my spiritual, my energetic self, there was so much inside of me that needed to come out and speak and feel and touch the world and get to know the surroundings. And basically, I wanted to show up in an environment and be able to shift the environment. I was not going to be a product of my environment anymore, and CJ helped me do that. We have explored usage of tools. So the Fit Fighters, the Vipers, the landmines, the coil ropes, the Wing Chun rings, you name it, we've explored it. The body levers, shout out to Body Lever, I'm going to see them in August, right? Like, so on and so forth, okay? We have explored the dynamic ranges of movement. We've explored the traditional and isolated versus the movement, the 3D style training. We've explored the metrics and what it means to go outside the metrics versus staying within the metrics. We've explored how to work through pain and dysfunction, a big part of that being discomfort and the challenge, the fear of the unknown. What happens if I get injured? What happens if I don't know how to use this tool? What happens if I can't do this, right? We have explored how to become a better coach. Shout out to CJ. This guy has answered all my texts, all my calls, all my voice messages, all my social media messages. We have done, I think, 2 podcasts together now. We have done many FaceTime calls. This guy is the real deal. Please try and connect with him if you want to know more about you. All right, and then, look, Steve Mazesko, okay? This is a new one. This is 2024. This is super powerful. My daughter was born, right? Daughter was born March 11th. My birthday is March 10th, so we're going to share that experience for the rest of our lives. Boom, okay? Steve Mazesko, Radical Dad Movement, Rad Dad on Instagram. This guy, I just have a ton of appreciation for this individual. We basically started talking because I'm a father of 3. I'm a first-time girl dad. He has children. They are homeschooled. He had certain experiences coming up in his life. He decided to leave the traditional systems because of perception of they were broken or they're missing pieces. There's too many holes in it, etc. He decided to start tapping into and it's funny because he has his set of influential people in his life that he looks to, but he designed a program for fathers, for parents to up-level themselves, connect with themselves, their authentic self, connect with how to better serve their children, connect with how to better show up for their family as a support system, as someone striving for meaning from life. So just want to give Steve Mazesko a shout out there at the end, okay? His and our relationship is quite new. I'm still getting to know him a little bit. He's still getting to know me, but he has been extremely transparent about just his journey so far. He's already been helpful with some of the things he's kind of spoken to me about. So big shout out, Rad Dad on Instagram. I highly recommend if you are a father, if you are a parent seeking more fulfillment or enlightenment, I should say enlightenment, just from that experience and yes, I'd recommend reaching out to him. So I'll put that information in there as well. And then look, just last but not least, okay, I'm going to wrap this up here. One thing that I do highly recommend, a few things that I highly recommend. First, Dan Churchill, Eat Like a Legend book, okay? I use this book to provide myself with the nutrition, okay, for performance. So many books out there or recipes or meals are programmed around weight loss or gaining weight and so on and so forth. Dan Churchill is an endurance athlete, a pretty intense endurance athlete, if I may say. He was on the Rich Roll podcast, and he came out with a book. He's a chef. He came out with a book based around eating more specifically for performance and how you perform, whether it's pre-workout, post-workout, recovery and restoration, getting ready for the day, your rest days, etc., 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 etc. Highly recommend looking into that. I'll throw resources up for that, link up for that. Next piece, Matthew Walker. I mentioned that in episode 1. Matthew Walker, okay, the sleep doctor, sleep scientist. This guy, I went through his masterclass. I listened to most of his podcasts. I went through the website. He's got up like information pamphlets on his website. Learning about sleep was so empowering. I highly recommend you do it. I'm just going to say that. All right. And the reason that I think it is very important to recognize is that sleep is your superpower. Sleep is your only superpower, right? And people will be like, no, what about, sleep is where your body rebuilds itself. If you don't get sleep, you're inhibiting the ability to rebuild yourself. If you have not rebuilt yourself, you're going to fall into the same attractor wells, the same dysfunctions, the same patterns on repeat, right? The less sleep you have, the less ability you have to manage and navigate your life. Decisions become poor. Decisions around food become poor. Decisions around emotions become poor or unfavorable. I highly recommend connect with Matthew Walker. This guy's big, so you're not going to be able to actually speak to him. I've never actually spoken to him. This is all through his information that he has out to the public. Matthew Walker, sleep doctor, sleep scientist. Connect with all that. I will put the resources there. Okay? Look, episode 2. All right? Influential people, support system, a reliable team. Okay? Resources within the journey. If I were you, my closing statement here, if I were you, an actionable step, okay, I want you to make a list of those people that not only you could reach out to right now and say, hey, thank you, I'm grateful for you. You've helped me do X, Y, Z, okay? But those people who you see as helping you have shifted your state, your experience. And if you are someone who's seeking this shift, if you're someone who's like, man, this sounds incredible. Like, I wish I had a team like this. Look, this team did not happen overnight. This team happened because I finally got to a place of so much suffering that I was like, help me, right? If you are there, if you are in that position, if you're feeling that, I want you to start asking for help, okay? That's a starting point, right? Ask the people around you. Use the resources that you already have. There's people there, especially if you are someone who does have insurance. Most insurances now offer therapy sessions, right? Most insurances now give incentive to go start working out, and you get paid for that. Most insurances start offering this reward system in which you get access or money towards future products, they'll pay for your appointments, they'll pay for your co-pays if you're doing X, Y, Z to maintain a certain level of health, mental health, so on and so forth. Use the resources at your disposal. You have to. Then on top of that, I would start with Matthew Walker. Just start researching the sleep, okay? Because ultimately, if you're sleeping better, better decisions will occur to you. That's a fact. All right, episode 2, that's a wrap, okay? Boom, got it. Episode 3 on the way. All right, gonna start having some co-hosts drip into this. I'm really excited about that. Made a list of people that I want as co-hosts. That is to come. Talk to you soon. Have a great day.